Quickly tell our viewers that the recent US-Russia talks in Saudi Arabia marked a major diplomatic step in the ongoing war. After over 4 hours, both nations reached 4 key agreements aimed at restoring ties and addressing future geopolitical cooperation. Notably, Ukraine was excluded from the talks. Now, President Zelensky has rejected any outcomes made without Kyiv's involvement and is set to visit Saudi, but has no scheduled meetings with US or Russian officials. But let me cut across back to Srinjoy. Srinjoy, are we looking at a situation where there could be a major breakthrough in the larger scheme of things and perhaps peace on the cards? What do we know?
Well, first of all, this is only our first step. And our first step is a beginning, but there is a lot more to be done. First of all, as the Ukrainians have rightly said, that they are not involved in it. They have been fighting this war for over 1,000 days with Russia. Now, the second issue is, this has to be, as the second point in the agreement says, it has to be acceptable to all. So what is going to be acceptable to Ukraine? Will that be acceptable to Russia? Well, just to take an example, the case of Crimea. Crimea was taken over by Russia several years ago. Ukraine says it's Ukrainian. Russia says it's Russian. What is the solution? These are very difficult answers to find, but it's important to try for them. Now, how much effort will be made, how successful it will happen, only remains to be seen.
All right, Srinjoy, thank you also joining us with details as to how we're looking at this particular situation. Like you've said, it's the first step. Of course, in due course of time, we will know how that's going to be panning out, and essentially, will there finally be peace in sight for that situation? But for now, we leave it at that. But let's also listen to the reactions that came in earlier as far as this entire matter is concerned.
Well, there are some underlying principles. This needs to be a permanent end to the war and not a temporary end as we've seen in the past. We know just the practical reality is that there is going to be some discussion of territory and there's going to be discussion of security guarantees. Those are just fundamental basics that will undergird and underlie any type of discussion. But I think the most important part is the President has stated his desire, his determination to end this war, to end the killing that is going on, the death and destruction that is happening as this war goes on and on, month after month after month, in the killing fields of eastern and southern Ukraine is unacceptable. It is not in the interest of either country. It's not in the interest of the world, and certainly not in the interest of the United States and Europe.
I would start by saying we've agreed on 4 principles that I think are important. The first is that we're going to appoint our teams respectively to work very quickly to reestablish the functionality of our respective missions in Washington and in Moscow. For us to be able to continue to move down this road, we need to have diplomatic facilities that are operating and functioning normally. The second point is that we're going to appoint a high-level team from our end to help negotiate and work through the end of the conflict in Ukraine in a way that's enduring and acceptable to all the parties engaged. The third point is to begin to work at a high level as well to begin to discuss and think about and examine both the geopolitical and economic cooperation that could result from an end to the conflict in Ukraine. Obviously, we'd have to see that conflict come to a successful and enduring end in order for that to be possible. And the last thing we agreed to is that while our teams are going to be working on all of this, the 4 of us who were here today, the 5 of us that were here today, are going to remain engaged in this process to make sure that it's moving along in a productive way.